Chapter 2 of Stories from Pentamerone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joy Chan. Stories from Pentamerone by Giambattista Pesede. Chapter 2. The Myrtle. There lived in the village of Miano a man and his wife who had no children whatever, and they longed with the greatest eagerness to have an heir. The woman, above all, was for ever saying, "O heavens, if I might but have a little baby, I should not care were it even a sprig of a myrtle." And she repeated this song so often, and so wearied heaven with these words, that at last her wish was granted, and at the end of 9 months, instead of a little boy or girl, she placed in the hands of the nurse a fine sprig of myrtle. This she planted with great delight in a pot, ornamented with ever so many beautiful figures, and set it in the window, tending it morning and evening, with more diligence than the gardener does a bed of cabbages from which he reckons to pay the rent of his garden. Now the king's son happening to pass by, as he was going to hunt, took a prodigious fancy to this beautiful plant, and sent to ask the mistress of the house if she would sell it, for he would give even one of his eyes for it. The woman at last, after 1,000 difficulties and refusals, allured by his offers, dazzled by his promises, frightened by his threats, overcome by his prayers, gave him the pot, beseeching him to hold it dear, for she loved it more than a daughter, and valued it as much as if it were her own offspring. Then the prince had the flower pot carried with the greatest care in the world into his own chamber, and placed it in a balcony, and tended and watered it with his own hand. It happened one evening, when the prince had gone to bed, and put out the candles, and all were at rest and in their first sleep, that he heard the sound of some one stealing through the house, and coming cautiously towards his bed, whereat he thought it must be some chamber boy coming to lighten his purse for him, or some mischievous imp to pull the bedclothes off him. But as he was a bold fellow whom none could frighten, he acted the dead cat, waiting to see the upshot of the affair. When he perceived the object approach nearer, and stretching out his hand felt something smooth, and instead of laying hold, as he expected, on the prickles of a hedgehog, he touched a little creature more soft and fine than Barbary wool, more pliant and tender than a marten's tail, more delicate than thistledown. He flew from one thought to another, and taking her to be a fairy, as indeed she was, he conceived at once a great affection for her. The next morning, before the sun, like a chief physician, went out to visit the flowers that are sick and languid, the unknown fair one rose and disappeared, leaving the prince filled with curiosity and wonder. But when this had gone on for 7 days, he was burning and melting with desire to know what good fortune this was that the stars had showered down on him, and what ship freighted with the graces of love it was that had come to its moorings in his chamber. So one night, when the fair maiden was fast asleep, he tied one of her tresses to his arm, that she might not escape. Then he called a chamberlain, and bidding him light the candles, he saw the flower of beauty, the miracle of women, the looking-glass and painted egg of Venus, the fair bait of love. He saw a little doll, a beautiful dove, a fata morgana, a banner. He saw a golden trinket, a hunter, a falcon's eye, a moon in her 15th day, a pigeon's bill, a morsel for a king, a jewel. He saw, in short, a sight to amaze one. In astonishment he cried, "O sleep, sweet sleep, heap poppies on the eyes of this lovely jewel. Interrupt not my delight in viewing, as long as I desire this triumph of beauty. O lovely tress that binds me, O lovely eyes that inflame me, O lovely lips that refresh me, O lovely bosom that consoles me. O where, at what shop of the wonders of nature was this living statue made? What India gave the gold for these hairs? What Ethiopia the ivory to form these brows? What seashore the carbuncles that compose these eyes? What Tyre the purple to dye this face? What East the pearls to string these teeth? and from what mountains was the snow taken to sprinkle over this bosom? Snow contrary to nature, that nurtures the flowers and burns hearts." So saying, he made a vine of his arms, and clasping her neck, she awoke from her sleep and replied with a gentle smile to the sigh of the enamoured prince, who, seeing her open her eyes, said, "O my treasure! If viewing without candles this temple of love I was in transports, what will become of my life now that you have lighted 2 lamps? O beauteous eyes, that with a trump card of light make the stars bankrupt, you alone have pierced this heart. You alone can make a poultice for it like fresh eggs. O my lovely physician, take pity on one who is sick of love, who having changed the air from the darkness of night to the light of this beauty, is seized by a fever. Lay your hand on this heart, feel my pulse, give me a prescription. But, my soul, why do I ask for a prescription? I desire no other comfort than a touch of that little hand, for I am certain that with the cordial of that fair grace, and with the healing root of that tongue of thine, I shall be sound and well again." At these words the lovely fairy grew as red as fire, and replied, "Not so much praise, my lord prince. I am your servant, and would do anything in the world to serve that kingly face, and I esteem it great good fortune that from a bunch of myrtle, set in a pot of earth, I have become a branch of laurel hung over the inn door of a heart in which there is so much greatness and virtue." The prince, melting at these words like a tallow candle, began again to embrace her, and sealing the latter with a kiss, he gave her his hand, saying, "Take my faith, you shall be my wife, you shall be mistress of my sceptre, you shall have the key of this heart, as you hold the helm of this life." After these and 100 other ceremonies and discourses they arose, and so it went on for several days. But as spoil-sport marriage-parting fate is always a hindrance to the steps of love, it fell out that the prince was summoned to hunt a great wild boar which was ravaging the country. So he was forced to leave his wife. But as he loved her more than his life, and saw that she was beautiful beyond all beautiful things, from this love and beauty there sprang up the feeling of jealousy, which is a tempest in the sea of love, a piece of soot that falls into the pottage of the bliss of lovers, which is a serpent that bites, a worm that gnaws, a gall that poisons, a frost that kills, making life always restless, the mind unstable, the heart ever suspicious. So, calling the fairy, he said to her, "I'm obliged, my heart, to be away from home for 2 or 3 days. Heaven knows with how much grief I tear myself from you, who are my soul, and heaven knows too whether, ere I set out, my life may not end. But as I cannot help going to please my father, I must leave you. I therefore pray you, by all the love you bear me, to go back into the flower pot, and not to come out of it till I return, which will be as soon as possible." "I will do so," said the fairy, "for I cannot and will not refuse what pleases you. Go, therefore, and may the mother of good luck go with you, for I will serve you to the best of my power. But do me one favour. Leave a thread of silk with a bell tied to the top of the myrtle, and when you come back pull the thread and ring, and immediately I will come out and say, 'Here I am.'" The prince did so, and then calling a chamberlain said to him, come hither, you! Open your ears and mind what I say. Make this bed every evening as if I were myself to sleep in it. Water this flower pot regularly, and mind, I have counted the leaves, and if I find one missing, I will take from you the means of earning your bread." So saying, he mounted his horse, and went like a sheep that is led to the slaughter, to follow a boar. In the meanwhile 7 wicked women, with whom the prince had been acquainted, began to grow jealous, and being curious to pry into the secret, they sent for a mason, and for a good sum of money got him to make an underground passage from their house into the prince's chamber. Then these cunning jades went through the passage in order to explore.